Hey, we're live here. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Luke and Cliff in Luke's office today.
I know, right? Different
kind of
backdrop.
Fun little backshed episode today. Welcome. Good to have you all here today. There we are. We're seeing on our screen. We're live. We're looking forward to a few people jumping on here in a second.
Oh, it's been a while since I've been on.
It's been a while. I feel like the last time was almost a year ago at Hume Lake.
Oh, that's right. You know what you should do? So Saturday Night Live has when you're on 5 times, you get like your 5-time jacket. You need to start having like your guest rewards, like the 5-timers club.
They get you a pin that you put on your lapel, something like that. Then
my flair.
All of you would know that too. All one of you that's watching. Hey, good to have you guys here this morning. It is the 3rd of June, 2024. It's a gloomy looking day out in sun wherever we are, Fair Oaks, but good times going on here. Luke and I kind of spur of the moment decided it would be fun to talk a little bit about the upcoming Israel trip.
Yeah.
Which is next February.
Yeah.
And this is fun because obviously you lived in Israel.
Yes.
For
3 years.
Was it that long?
I know. It was crazy. 3 years after being married for just 6 months. So, which I will say, it was one of the most formational times for Sarah as far as, you know, when we've been married, because we were married in Caronport, Saskatchewan, which was the home of Briarcrest and Bible College. And everybody knew me as single Luke from the dorms. They knew Sarah as single Sarah from the dorms. They knew us as dating. And so when we got married, I'd still get calls at 3 a.m. for an Xbox tournament, you know, from the guys in the dorm and all this. But we arrived in Israel 6 months after being married, and we stepped off the plane as Mr. and Mrs. Miller. And it was just, everybody just knew us.
And
we've been married.
No other context whatsoever.
Yeah, we're just missing it. And so it was probably, again, one of the most formational times. I look back.
So 6 months into your marriage.
Yeah.
So a month into our marriage, April and I went on a mission trip to Papua New Guinea.
Wow.
I don't recommend it because I had done this mission trip 2 other times. So I kind of got over there and I had my thing that I was doing. I'm like, well, I do this and I do that. And she's sitting there like, he doesn't love me. You know, like, how come he won't spend time with me?
Just in the zone.
And yeah, I was in my zone. So we had some long, hard conversations. And the next mission trip we did was pivotal because it determined whether we would ever do a mission trip together again or not. And it went much better. So I learned.
We did, before we were dating, we spent a summer, while we were dating, we spent a summer apart before we were engaged. And this has nothing to do with Israel, but Sarah was at like a camp in Saskatchewan where they slept in chuck wagons with canvas, and there's only 2 seasons in Saskatchewan. There is winter and mosquito. And so she's out there at this camp and chasing kids who are running away from camp and all sorts of things going on. And I was working at a camp out in British Columbia where I was the golf instructor, staying in an air-conditioned
night and day.
And I had to explain to her that golfers need Jesus too. And so, you know, I'm just doing my part for the kingdom. But
well, that was now we'll tell the camp stories.
Yeah, I know, right?
The first several international camps that I ever did, we would do for Hume, we'd do these camps overseas, and we'd usually do these camps for missionary kids. But the missionaries were like, no, we're not going to do a camp on our base. Like, let's go rent a resort. And so we would rent resorts and put on camp in a resort. So like literally one camp we had, there was a swim up bar
my goodness.
in the pool. I'm like, I just don't even, anyway, the bar wasn't open, wasn't serving, just to clarify for you all out there. I'm hoping this would stir up comments, but so far nothing.
We're doing all right.
Hey, you guys just celebrated 20 years.
We did. Yeah. That's why it kind of brings back this like full circle of us. You know, I've been back to Jerusalem a bunch of times. I teach for one of the universities over there. I've worked on a dig for years over there. But yeah, it's kind of cool as we head to 2025, which was originally supposed to be 2024. Right. And we made that pivot to Turkey last year and had a great trip over
Little
there.
war got in the way.
Yeah. And so now with Israel opening up and 2025 is right on the horizon and looks real good. So it's kind of fun for us because normally when I go over there, I'm going over there to teach and I'm by myself.
Yeah.
Here, Sarah gets to, it's full circle from 20 years ago.
You guys get to do this together.
Yeah. It's fun. And like the people from Turkey who went on that trip will understand it. It's like, for so many people, they see Sarah on Sunday mornings at the info booth and doing different things around the church. But at the same time, it's like you go over there, now you're in a different country, and I it's fun to watch, her thrive in just this totally different country because the story of when we first arrived to Israel 20 or I guess it would have been
20 years ago. I mean,
less than 20 years ago. Was we're leaving her parents' house to go over for the first time, and all of a sudden tears start coming down her cheeks, and she's like, I don't think I can do this. And I'm like, and this is with her parents sitting on the driveway, and I'm like, oh no, like I can't, like of all the places,
right? Like,
could you have waited 3 minutes till we're in the car,
like, and we're committed.
Yeah,
we're money committed.
Yeah.
We got plane tickets.
And
we're going.
And then 3 years later, when we were leaving Jerusalem to go back and we were flying to Toronto, the exact same scene played out where she's like, I don't want to leave, And so you see her even in Turkey and all these places. I mean, it'll sound like you've heard this before in a sermon illustration, but she seems to thrive in like the outdoor markets where you just her bartering skills or everything. But it's
it sounds like it was somewhat formational in both of your lives.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways. So you went over there to study.
I went to study. I was doing my master's.
You got your master's?
Yeah.
There.
So
okay.
I was doing my master's over there. Sarah had never seen the ocean until she met my parents when we were dating, and we went to Victoria. And so now the first trip, like out of country, was us going to the other side of the planet. Like, and there was a Lifetime
to the Middle East.
Yeah, to the Middle East, and there was a Lifetime movie called Not Without My Daughter, which was essentially playing out the scenario of this guy taking these people's daughter over to the Middle East. And I'm pretty sure her parents were like, we've seen this movie. Like,
right.
I didn't, because even 20 years ago, I knew this was a bad idea. But when I came back the first time, because I went over to do languages for about 2 months and do modern Hebrew over there, and then come back to pick up Sarah, I almost got off the plane and I had one of those chic scarves, and I was going to come off the plane because her dad was picking me up just to mess with him, but I did not.
That's wise of you.
I know. Yeah.
Very wise of you. All right. Let's,
all right.
I was going to say, let's talk Turkey. No, let's talk Israel for a second. Coming up in February.
Yes.
Which during what we call President's Week around here, and then some time beyond that, if I understand correctly.
Yeah.
We're going to be taking a group over to Israel. How many people?
We have room for 47.
A bus.
A bus. Yeah, a full bus. I don't like more than a bus because it's just, you want this to be a formational time for everyone, not feeling like you're just kind of being shuffled around from place to place.
And having been on one of these tours before, even that time on the bus is formational.
Yeah.
In so many ways. You've just come off of seeing Capernaum and been where Jesus spoke and taught, and you saw Peter's house and all of these things. And then you get back on the bus and you have a group of 5 or 6, 7, 8 people like right in this, and you start talking and processing and
and it, like, every place brings up, I want to say, some emotion of, like, when you read a book, like, just you're in school. I remember my 5th grade teacher would read, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, after lunch, he would always read a chapter. But you've just envisioned this world, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like we do that with the Bible too, right? Like we read the stories of David and Goliath, and we envision what that looks like. We read the Sermon on the Mount, and we envision what's happening there. And then there's those times where you get there and you're like, oh yeah, this is kind of like what I envisioned. But there's those times where you're like,
I had no clue.
right? Or just to be
like my favorite is probably the Sermon on the Mount, and being
Okay,
able to be on the
yeah.
Mount of the Beatitudes.
Yeah.
You're just overlooking the Sea of Galilee.
Yeah.
You see the Golan Heights off to the distance, the Moab Hills where, you know, Ruth would have played out, and like all this setting all around you. And
So much context.
yeah, like you read how much the Jesus is taking from the surroundings. And I
Yeah.
would say that was one of the most formational times of when we're in Turkey, right? Is to be able to be in Ephesus and turn on your audio Bible and walk around the streets of Ephesus, listening and seeing the imagery of what Paul is writing to the Ephesians, and
Right.
to the point where they have like there's so much imagery of armor in
Mhm.
Ephesians.
Yeah.
And as we were talking, and it was mostly, you know, the site was pretty empty when we were there. All of a sudden in the distance, they're doing this reenactment of when Cleopatra came to Ephesus to visit, and they put on gladiator fights. So you're listening to Ephesians, and you're seeing this imagery
seeing
play
it all
itself
play out
out,
right there in
and
front of
like
you.
on all of the
Yeah.
pillars, there's just Roman soldiers, there's temples and shrines to Caesar and all this, and you just get the imagery. And Israel is the same way. It just it brings it to life like you never thought it would.
Well, I had the same thing, like you talk about Mount of Beatitudes. I remember going to Caesarea Philippi,
Mm.
and you're in that
Yeah.
that place where Jesus said, you know, on this rock I'll build my church, and
Yeah.
gates of Hades will not prevail against it. And I had never had that put into so much context to know what that place was, what this cave in the rock that was called the gates of Hades, like it, and
Which, you know, fun kind of story on the gates of Hades,
Okay.
as weird as that sounds coming out,
Fun.
is so Caesarea Philippi, it has that, but also in Turkey, in Hierapolis is also the gates. So the joke in Turkey was, okay, well, Caesarea Philippi is the front door, Turkey's the back door. But you know, but it's true. Like you see where church, like
Yeah.
the fact of Jesus saying that, like as you're looking at this dark cave, you know, that they're calling the gate of Hades, and you're like, man, you know,
Yeah.
like this wasn't him just saying something. This was a declaration, right?
Totally.
Of him, of just, I mean, reminiscent of Genesis 1 and the spirits hovering over the deeps, which you go back to Mesopotamian mythology, and the deeps is where the creation story comes from, right?
Okay.
And so now the imagery in Genesis 1 is that the Spirit of God was even in control over what they thought was their creation. Like, what do you think your creation is? Our God is like, he created the waters, you know, like, and the deeps and everything. So that's where you know, Hades and Caesarea Philippi is just that.
I'm gonna flash a picture up here on the screen while I can.
Yeah.
We'll do a little screen share here. This is a picture from Caesarea Philippi right there.
Yeah, you see the gate, or the cave up, you know, in the center, up towards the top there in the distance. The rivers there, the waters that are flowing down the mountain from Mount Hermon, and oh yeah, there you got the close up. And what's interesting is from Caesarea the water flows down from the mountains. Mount Hermon's Israel's only ski hill that's open 2 weeks of the year.
And this was nearby.
That's so Tel Dan is just down the road,
Yeah.
which is kind of the northern point of Israel, and one of the places where they had the golden calf.
Got it.
And so it was kind of like the capital of the northern kingdom in many ways.
Yeah.
So there's just like, and that's what Israel's so small in a sense. Like I think,
Right.
you know,
I mean, it's what size of California?
oh, gosh,
If not even that.
not even. It's like it's the size of like like Vancouver Island. So Israel,
Oh,
landmass size is New Jersey,
New
and
Jersey.
population is New Jersey. That's the
Wow.
closest thing to it. So
Got it.
so you know, you'll go 6 hours from north to south and you'll be out, and east to west it's really about 2 hours, 3 hours kind of thing. And so, you know, you hear Mount of Olives and you realize, okay, well, mountain is really a hill, just in
Right,
context.
right, right, right.
You're like, wait, hiking the Mount of Olives is not like, you don't need a day pack and pack rations.
Right. Let's talk Mount of Olives here
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
second, because that's a place that obviously everyone will get to go
Yeah.
if you participate in this.
And that was about a 25-minute walk from our house in Jerusalem.
okay.
There's
So
3 hills. There is Mount
Here-
of Olives. Then
here's Cliff.
Oh,
on
yeah.
we're
Look at
gonna-
that guy.
Yeah, look at that guy. He was a little less of Cliff back then than there is now. But yeah, there we are looking out, and you've got the Temple Mount
yes.
is back there in the background, right? With
Yeah.
the Dome of the Rock right there.
Yeah, you're going down. You see the groves down below.
Which
Um,
let's talk about what's right here.
yeah, so those are, you see these, I guess, modern day ossuaries,
Uh-huh.
where those
I'll see
are
if I can get a better
yeah,
picture of that.
above ground tombs,
There we go.
which is the most expensive property in the world.
Right.
So it sells by the square inch. Because if you look at, you see that golden dome in the background there,
there.
the Dome of the Rock, that's the Temple Mount there. But there is a gate just before it, yeah, just right there,
Okay.
to the right of that. I'd say to the tree, but I now realize there's about 1,400 trees in that picture. Oh, there you go.
Let's
Yeah.
see here.
And so you should be able to see an outline of
There's a gate right
a gate. Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. So, and that's where they believe the Messiah will come for the
It'll
first
come
time.
for the
Yeah,
first time.
Yeah,
So if you're buried there,
you get first
dibs.
dibs, right?
Right.
So, and then when Jesus comes again, you get front row seat, right? You know,
Exactly.
so it's, yeah, so it's so expensive. So that's actually, you walk down there, you've got a traditional Garden of Gethsemane around there,
Yeah.
and you know, for where we were, there's Mount of Olives, and then about a 10-minute walk away from that is
Mhm.
Mount Scopus. That's where I was at university. That's where I
Oh,
am still adjunct professor at. And then
So cool.
and then the next hill over, or mountain over, is French Hill.
Okay.
So, and that's where we lived.
Well,
And that's
this-
actually where we're staying in Jerusalem. If you go, we're staying on French Hill at Tel Dan Hotel,
Oh,
which is
where
the falafel stand
Yeah,
is.
the falafel
That
stand.
I'm pretty sure I paid their kids way through college through my
That's
frequent
hilarious.
visits. So
this is a shot I took just walking on the Via Dolorosa.
Yeah, Via Dolorosa
and there in Jerusalem. And the thing that stood out to me so much are you're just in these narrow, they're not streets.
yeah,
I mean, they are, but they aren't.
yeah,
Because obviously everyone's just walking through there, and in the background in this particular day, I remember when I took this picture, you had the Muslim call to prayer that
Oh,
was
yeah.
happening at that time, and so it's just speakers just screaming out over the city.
yeah. And I mean, it's something you get used to. We didn't hear it as much in Turkey as I expected, but in Jerusalem and Jordan, where we'll be, like, you just, it echoes throughout the valley. In
Right,
Jerusalem,
yeah.
I've talked about a lot in church how Jerusalem is naturally a like its own hyperbolic mic, you
Right,
know, where
Right.
from the center you hear everything that's going on. So you just hear the calls to prayer, you hear all these, just resonates all around the city. It really was. If every time I think Palm Sunday, and because we would do the Palm Sunday parade
Yeah.
And walk it, the path down and you'd walk the Via Dolorosa, but it would, you could hear everything that was going on in the city, you know, like you
Uh-huh.
just hear,
You
especially in the
hear-
old city, you just,
And it's not like the noises of the city that I think of when I think of going to San Francisco or going to
yeah,
LA. Like all you hear in one of those cities is people honking.
yeah. I feel like it's a lot like, if you go to a baseball stadium or you go somewhere and you hear the voice of the crowd,
Uh-huh.
right? Like there's what's going on in front of you,
Yeah.
but then you realize that there's people, clapping over on one side, people trying to start a wave over, like you just hear from around the stadium,
Yeah.
different pockets of groups doing different things. And that's kind of what's happening. You've got the Jewish quarter, the Muslim
Mhm.
quarter, the Christian quarter, Armenian quarter of the old city. Like it's divided
Yeah.
into 4 groups, and there's always something going on, and so that old city is just alive. You know, it's a hub. It is, you know, we're really looking forward to going back. And
I wish I could go, but I will go on a future trip for
yeah.
sure.
Well, you know, I think, you know, one of our goals in this, and to speak to that, is as we've mapped out these different trips
Yeah.
that Sunrise can do, is that ability to know, hey, if you go to Israel now, well, we know that the next trip to Israel is in 2 years.
You
right?
got 2 years to save some money.
Yeah, and
Right.
and we know that the next trip, like Turkey, is every 4 years, and Egypt is every 4 years, right? So it's all on its own little pattern, right?
Yeah.
So if you go to Israel this year, you know that, okay, well, in 3 years, if you want to go see the New Testament sites of Turkey, you've got 3 years where you can kind of put a little away and save up for that trip. So we tried to craft it the best we can in with GTI tours and everything, where we'll have this cycle where you're able to really see most of the Bible lands, you know, from following in the footsteps of Moses in Egypt to Jordan.
And that's the thing, I can't even describe enough how different it is when you are seeing the place where history played out.
Yeah.
And the Bible goes from being words on paper to being alive. Like that's really how I saw it. I mean, I had this moment looking out over the Sea of Galilee on the kind of the southwest side. We were up on top of Mount Arbel. I can't remember the name of the mountain we were on. But we were looking down over the sea, and I just went, it's true.
Yeah.
Like it's all true. Which, like, duh, I'm a pastor, I should know that. But like, no, I saw all of this playing out in real time.
It's a light bulb moment. I think, you know, the Elah Valley is one where David and Goliath plays itself out, where the group can be up on the hill.
Yep.
I can go down at the bottom and shout out at them, and they can hear me crystal clear.
Yeah.
You know, I think the funny story with the Elah Valley is, right, so there's the river along there's a river bed that runs along the bottom, of course, where David picked out 5 smooth stones.
Right.
And
the bus has you stop and you get to pick out stones.
Right, you know, and so all across the world, I know my kids thought it when my parents went and visited us, and then later on in life when we had Ari and Levy, I remember my dad showing them, he had got this little piece of wood and he glued 4 stones on it, and he's like, look what I got. They're the 4 stones David didn't use. But which everybody has the 4 stones that David didn't use.
There's the valley.
There's the valley, right? So you could sit down on that bottom, and you can't quite see the riverbed. It's just beyond the trees. But but I have a picture somewhere. I wish I brought it today. But I have a picture of them dumping more rock in the riverbed because of all the tour groups coming through. And so
the stone I have is one of them.
If anybody's watching and has authentic stones from David's 4 others, then I'm
just keep believing.
You've got the originals.
Yeah, as far as you know.
Everybody else has the extras.
But just to think, like, this is where that happened.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just something somebody made up a random story and put it. Like, it has a geographic location, and I think when you see the land and all of the descriptions, I mean, I could say the same thing for Armageddon. Like, when we went to Megiddo.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, is this where? I look at my buddy Rich. I go, is this where it's going to happen?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's funny. That's like one of those light bulb moments where, like, we're going to Megiddo, and in Hebrew, the word for mountain is Har.
Okay.
And so people start saying Mount Megiddo, Har Megiddo, Har Mageddon, Armageddon. Wait, is this
right? It's like ding ding ding.
Just light bulb moments going on, you know, in that. And you just see, you drive by Nazareth. I mean, there's so much, because Jesus did so much walking, you know, and going from place to place. But the thing that, it stood out in Turkey as we looked at Paul and his journeys walking along the Roman road is you realize that a lot of these, there's like tiny small clusters of houses along the road of, like, 10 little homes. And then you go about a mile down the road and there's maybe another 10. And you realize when Jesus is sending out his disciples in twos or sending them out, like, as you're standing on the Mount of Beatitudes, you can point out the archaeological sites of these ancient cities and realize, like, he's just sending, like he's this hub that he's sending them out to.
Right.
And you also get this picture of like when he's preaching on the Mount of the Beatitudes, you realize that like these cities aren't cities of 50, 60,000 people. This is like feeding of the 5,000
Hundreds
is
and-
like
right.
all these small pockets of people coming from everywhere,
A
every
long
direction.
way. Yeah.
So you look
Yeah.
around as you're on this hilltop and you can imagine just seeing people coming from every direction around
Yeah.
you to hear Jesus. You realize the effort that was in to have this encounter with
Right.
Jesus.
Would you walk? I mean, when I think about the distance they would have walked to get there, and would I walk a day or two to go hear this guy talk?
Right? Yeah.
And
It's
obviously there was a compelling message there. There's so much more, but
Right,
we're
I
running
know.
out of time. Let's see here. It's worth every dollar, every penny, honestly. You'll have zero regrets. Donna said here in the comments, being there is an affirmation of all the Bible tells us,
Yeah.
right? That's the reason that's what I took away with me.
And I'll say, Lita, one of the things too, if you are with Israel, the people of Israel run a program called Birthright Israel.
Right.
And
Yeah.
this is, for years I've been saying this is something that I've really wanted to do.
Yep.
If you, up until the age of 21, I believe it is, if you have Jewish heritage, they will fly you over to Israel to essentially go to the homeland.
Yeah.
And I
And
love
you
it.
see these groups
Yeah.
everywhere you go while you're touring there.
Yeah. And they're just getting to see it. And they've recognized that if they can see it while they're young, it'll be formational for them the rest of their life.
I feel the same
Yeah.
way about our students.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
Right.
just it. And so
Yeah.
it's something I've been wanting to do. And now that's in that development of the cycle of both missions trips that we do with the youth, is to be able to have it where our youth and college kids would be able to go on a trip to Israel, where they know enough in advance. They're able to save up some money and do some fundraising. But
And with the local schools where we are,
Yeah.
you have it falling right in a week that they're off of school,
Yeah.
plus a few extra days, and it becomes a very doable thing in a time of the year that is not ridiculously hot. And
yes, yeah, we beat out the high holidays.
Yeah.
It's not too hot. It's really, February is the best time of year, I think, and so to be able to do that, to get them on a dig site,
Yeah.
get their hands, dirty in history,
Yeah.
and to have the Bible coming alive, because almost the number one thing that I hear every time we go to Israel and we take a group over there is,
Yeah.
I wish I had done this sooner.
Right.
And so,
exactly. And I mean, I came back with that thought saying, I wish I could get our young people here as a formational part of their spiritual development,
Yeah.
growing up, that you can see this before you head off to college and
Yes.
get all of everything that's going to get you in college. Alyssa, so it's a program for Jewish young people.
yeah,
And they call it home
Birthright Israel.
Birthright Israel.
Yeah. And so, yeah, you see buses everywhere
Yeah.
of them, and they kind of follow the Jewish roots of everything. They get to experience, a Shabbat dinner we'll have a Shabbat dinner
Yeah,
while
you
we're
will.
there. We'll have two of them, but we'll a Shabbat dinner, and them to head to the temple and just really experience life in Judaism. For us, it's being able to experience not only the Old Testament part of it, where
Right.
it's just the theology of God and the imagery. I mean, En Gedi is another example. You're
Right.
sitting there where
Oh.
David writes a good chunk of his Psalms, and you're looking out at the imagery that David uses with his Psalms, and it's just so to be able to do that, to have the youth and college kids sit and read the Psalms in the place where David was writing them, and the Bible comes alive, it becomes, I think, even more personal to you.
Yep.
And for the rest of your life, we would take a Bible and we'd get people to highlight the places where they've been. So for the
Right.
rest of their life, when they open up their Bible, they see that highlighter and they're like, I was in that spot, and it is.
Well, I'll throw one more picture up here. As you mentioned,
Yeah.
in Getty, we had gone on this this hike where you go up into this kind of canyon, so to speak, there, and you're looking at the caves where he would have been hiding.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I'm really hoping with me being able to have credentials with the Antiquities Authority,
right.
because of my role over there, and a few things. When we take that group of youth or college kids out to jump on a archaeological site, you know, we can go to the Dead Sea Scroll Center, but we can also go off the beaten path and hike up to a few of the caves, not the Dead Sea Scroll caves, but caves where, I mean,
that
well,
would be cool.
things were found, and just be in the Judean hills. And
Okay, so we'll do one last thing. Dead Sea Scrolls, right?
oh yeah,
Significant finding
yeah,
that really affirmed everything we already had in our scriptures, but went way back farther.
yeah. Up until that time, when the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, probably the greatest archaeological discovery of the past century, was recognizing, you know, they found these scrolls. I won't go into the whole story of
Right.
how they found the scrolls, because it is its own.
Was there a goat? No.
There was. It was a nomad, a goat farmer who just happened to be throwing stones, and it went into a cave, and then he found the scrolls.
I think that's
It's more, yeah, that's I think cave 2. And so but what happened is there was a group down in the Dead Sea area in Qumran,
Mhm.
and most people think actually that's where John the Baptist spent a good chunk of his
Mhm.
time. It was dedicated to writing out scripture, and there's a few scrolls that they found that had a lot of the language of John the Baptist in it. But what it did was, up until that point, we had texts from about 6th century, 7th century, in written form. But the problem is it left this kind of gap where people would say, okay, well, it just sounds like in 6th century they made things up.
Yeah.
And what you now find is the Dead Sea Scrolls brought it from about 200 BC to 300 AD. Like it moved it almost 1,000 years earlier, 800 years earlier, of when they found the first text. And they found every book of the Old Testament there except one, which was Esther, which I'm sure you can do a back shed on the Council of Nicaea.
I'll get somebody to do that for me. I'll bring a guest on.
So I got to earn that Five Timers Club.
I've got a couple ideas. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but it took it to the point where written language was actually really starting to come alive. Before that, it was more oral tradition, much like we would have. We think of nursery rhymes. There's a reason why, I can say Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, and everybody knows that Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again.
Yeah.
I don't read that every night, but I've got it memorized. Prior to, that
oral tradition
was a lot of singing. In fact, the Old Testament has markings in Hebrew that associate with different notes so that you can sing the Old Testament, which is why if you've ever been to a bar mitzvah, you hear this poor 13-year-old kid singing from the Torah. He's reading the notes of the Hebrew and the scripture and singing it. So I know that's a big rabbit trail. I'm probably about 4 different batshit Bible studies in one, but
this is good. I need this.
But it filled this giant gap. And so the argument for why the Bible didn't exist is that it was made up in like the 6th century. And all of a sudden, it just completely invalidated that argument.
And you went backwards 800 years. And
then you can't explain it anymore, right? So,
all the reason and more that you should sign up to go on this trip.
Yeah. I worked on Pesher Habakkuk. So I worked on the Dead Sea Scrolls while I was there.
Of course you did. Look what happens.
So, which is like, I feel like when I'm with friends in biblical scholar world, that I'm like, I say that and they're like, oh, that's awesome. And like, I say it around to other people, they're like, man, that's great. Congratulations. You wrote on parchment.
I had coffee with Phil Wickham.
Yeah, I know. See, I know. It's my Dead Sea Scroll stories are your Hume stories.
Right, exactly. And everyone's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, no, I can't emphasize it enough. Even just from Turkey and being able to walk the road that Paul did and seeing the missional nature of the first church and formation of the first church and individuals, to Israel and seeing the Bible come alive. you know, it is a life-changing
Yeah.
moment. Obviously, I am, you know, us living there, we have a huge love for Israel. Our friends, we've got friends over there, and you know, we would not be taking a group over there if it wasn't safe.
Did you hear that?
Yeah. So
It will be safe.
it will be safe, which is that the number one
You
question.
can never guarantee complete safety from anything, but
Yeah,
I would call this safer than
it is
San
hard.
Francisco or
Oh,
LA.
it's hard to believe just the level
Yeah.
of security that's actually there
Well,
that you
not
don't
to
even see.
not to mention, I think this is something important for people to understand. Without tourism, you know, Israel is
Yeah,
it is the central thing that keeps money flowing through the country in so many ways, and that applies for both the Palestinians and the
Yeah.
Israelis. So it's
yeah, and you know, we, in theory, we could have gone over there last year. The problem is a lot of the reservists who had been called up were people who run national parks
Yep.
and run this. And now all those reservists are back. Israel's open. You know, the conflict that is down there, you know, most signs point to it being in it concluded,
Yeah.
you know, even before the end of the summer. But it is now isolated into about a, you know,
very
20 square
specific
mile
area.
place in the farthest
Yeah.
corner of the Southwest, where we are nowhere near. And yeah, you know, there's lots of tour groups going over this summer.
Yeah.
And so by the time we hit February of next year, you know, I honestly say this is I've never felt safer than when I was in Jerusalem, you know, and after meeting people and I got to sit in a seminar with the head of the Shin Bet, which is like the Israeli FBI. And he was just telling about the layers of security that is in that nation.
Yeah, and I remember when I went over there, we went to Bethlehem and had a meal in Bethlehem. I got dressed up.
Yep.
And, I accused a street vendor of taking my phone. Turns out I left it on the bus. Which is a whole other story.
Yeah. So you're wondering how this whole conflict started,
Right. But I remember at a certain point, our bus driver had through word had found out an incident had happened about a half a mile to a mile down the street, and the guy did about a 28-point turn with the bus and on a 2-lane street in Bethlehem, and we got out of Bethlehem and moved on somewhere else, you know. And they take care of you. Your tour guides are looking after you, the bus drivers.
Yeah.
It's just a neat fellowship to be a part of. Talk about you're going to walk away knowing these 40-something other people really well, and having shared a major life experience with them. You'll never forget it. It's worth every like I said, worth every penny.
Yeah. No, agreed. So I say that as sign up went live about an hour and a half ago. And sunrise.church/Israel, if you're interested in going this year.
Yeah.
That's the place to go. The year after, 2026, looks like it'll be probably to Egypt, following in the footsteps of Moses. And that's another backshed again for another time.
That's right. Well, maybe
I'm really trying to sign myself up here, Rob.
And we're going to get Rich on here one of these days.
Which would
Rich, who actually currently holds the record for the most number of backsheds. He's done 3.
All right.
Actually, this might be your 3rd.
I think it is. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So
Rich and I are tied.
We'll get Rich on here. So Rich is one of my best friends. He runs GTI, the tour company that we use. That's not how we kind of hooked up with him that way, but
phenomenal company, phenomenal guy, phenomenal people over there who just understand the land, understand the people, and really just work so good with these groups. Especially, I say this as it's been so easy knowing that I come in with the historical context of living there. And so like for us to just be able to talk and figure out what this looks like was it was so.
Yeah, and GTI knows their way around and takes care of all the logistics and just makes it a great tour.
Yeah.
So again, sunrise.church/Israel. If you happen to be listening on the old podcast version right now and you're driving in your car, I'm going to put that in the notes. I'll also put it on the notes for Facebook and YouTube as well, so you can get that link there. I'll also give you a link to GTI Tours so you can see a little bit more about what they are about. Should be good.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm excited.
You want to pray us out of here?
Sure. Let's do it. God, we just thank you for today. Just thank you. We get to talk about Israel, Lord, your your first covenant people, Lord, as we just know your love for them, and we just think of Genesis 12, and you'll bless those who bless them, you'll curse those who curse them, and all the world will be blessed through them, Lord. And so for us to be able to head over to Israel and just be a part of the culture over there, see the Bible come to life, and Lord, for the stories that come afterwards, just being able to share with others about how the Bible is real, the places are real, and now even more so to make that faith even more real. So Lord, we just thank you for our time today, getting to talk, all the fun that Israel is, and reminisce and talk stories of it. Lord, you got some great things in store. And so we just thank you for our time together. Pray these things all in your amazing and holy name. Amen.
Amen. Yeah. So there we have it. Sunrise Backshed Israel edition. We'll have more. Also, just for you regulars, we will not be here next week, as I am going to be hanging out with Rich and his wife Becky, and our friends Jay and Jen, and we're doing a little getaway for my friend's 50th birthday with leaving our kids behind. So kind of excited about that. I mean, not permanently. I would not be excited about that. I like them.
Yeah.
I even love them.
Yeah.
But anyway, so no Backshed next week. We'll be back the week after that right here. Reminder, if you do want to check out the podcast version of this that you can listen to in audio form, you can download it on iTunes and any of your favorite podcasting platforms, or you can watch along later. So many people say, I just am not available on Mondays at 10, Cliff. And I say, you can go to our YouTube page. So just search Backshed Bible Study on YouTube. You'll find it right there. That's it.
Perfect.
For today. All right. Take care, everybody. See you later.